I was feeling at the time, I was like, well, the gold price is doing so well, but this doesn't feel like what everybody told me it was going to feel like when we're in a real gold bull market. And I had a conversation with my boss at the time, and I was saying, I don't know. They told me that when it's 2,500, everybody's going to come in. It's going to feel, wow, the generalist interest is there. And it just wasn't. And kind of same at 3,000. It felt like within the sector, we all felt good, but there wasn't that outside interest. And
Right.
the point being, maybe to say that right now, as we're getting up to 4,000, it feels like that is changing.
Yep.
It feels like we are getting that outside interest coming in. And it does now feel to me like what I was told for so many years, this is how it's going to be.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics in the midst of an historic gold and silver rally. Now, fortunately, to comment on such an important historic occasion, I am joined by the great Charlotte McLeod of the Investing News Network. And Charlotte, amongst other things, it's interesting because we essentially think of the two prior big peaks in gold and silver, 1980 and 2011. Now with silver dollar or so off of those previous peaks, while gold is well in excess of both of those, perhaps one could say that we are in the middle of the greatest gold and silver rally in history. Suppose all sorts of different ways you could describe what's going on, although certainly an exciting time, which makes it quite an honor to have you join us on the show. I know so many of the people who watch my channel have been watching you for even longer and have heard hundreds of your interviews, so quite an honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here as well. I think it's going to be fun.
Well, I would agree. And Charlotte, we can see how this plays out here. But as we get started, gold futures currently at $3,984.
My goodness.
Up only $76 on the day. Wow.
Wow.
So unfortunately, $76 is not a record. 39.84 is. Let's see. We're recording on Monday. We got up to 39.93. So that's why we had to call in Charlotte on a historic day. We'll get to silver in a moment, but just to start with, I mean, we're really 2 years in now to this rally that began in January of 2024, right there. I mean, I guess you could say even a little further back, but Charlotte, you're talking with people about this all day. And what would you say about what we've seen over these past 2 years?
Well, it definitely feels like we're in a historic time and have been going there for the last couple of years. I think maybe if it's okay, I'll take you back maybe more like a year and a half to the point that really stands out for me, which was when I was at PDAC in Toronto in March 2024. So just after that January 2024 time. And we had gotten past the 2000 level in gold. I think it was more like 2100 at the time. And when I go to these events, I do just a whole bunch of interviews over the course of a couple of days with everybody. And it becomes pretty clear quite quickly what the talking points are going to be. And at the time, we're all looking at gold. And I was asking all these questions like, okay, is this real? Is this going to continue? What's happening here? And there was a lot of optimism, but there was cautiousness as well. And I remember coming out, and when you do these events, there's all these interviews, and I can't post them right away. I try to do it pretty fast, but you can't put them all out right away. And what I remember is the gold price kept moving, and I was thinking, wow, I gotta post them quicker, or everything we talked about is gonna be out of date. And I think by the end of the month, that March 2024 time, we had gotten to about 2,300. So that was kind of a standout moment for me. And then following on from that, I guess I am a person like many who gravitates toward those round numbers. So looking over to 2500. I think we were there around August, September 2024. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And it felt significant, but I remember I was feeling at the time, I was like, well, the gold price is doing so well, but this doesn't feel like what everybody told me it was going to feel like when we're in a real gold bull market. And I had a conversation with my boss at the time, and I was saying, I don't know. They told me that when it's 2500, everybody's going to come in. It's going to feel, wow, the generalist interest is there. And it just wasn't. And kind of same at 3000. It felt like within the sector, we all felt good, but there wasn't that outside interest. And
Right.
the point being, maybe to say that right now, as we're getting up to 4,000, it feels like that is changing.
Yep.
It feels like we are getting that outside interest coming in. And it does now feel to me like what I was told for so many years, this is how it's going to be. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I've been feeling the same thing, and it's almost in the last month, and then even again, we're recording on October 6th today. Something within the last week, you know how it is, just when you talk with different people, and especially some of the mining executives, where it sounds like, in a way, like you said, that we haven't experienced. I don't remember quite like this in 2011, where it's now companies are like, hey, can you take 5 million? Can you take 10 million? Where it's a lot of money is now trying to come in, like we've heard about some of these times historically.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It feels different. I agree, you're right.
Yeah, well, I guess almost $4,000 gold and close to $50 silver will get us there. And Charlotte, I know you spend more of your waking hours, and it's probably healthy hearing people talk about silver and thinking about silver. Yet, either case, here we are above 48 bucks in the futures. It was interesting. Last week we had that one day where the price got absolutely pummeled. It was a penny away from 48 bucks, dropped over $2. By a day later, it was at a new high. What would you say on the silver side, where again people hear a lot about the deficits? Now we're hearing not just the deficit, but concerns about this free float in London, banks writing reports about months away, other prominent bankers talking about London tightness. So what could you share on the silver side?
Well, silver, I it's a little bit more confusing for me than gold, and I feel at least a little bit okay saying that because I think people who follow the market a lot more closely than I do have said similar things about how tricky silver can be. And yeah, there's a change here too. I think before the price really started moving, I was asking so many questions to people about, all right, we have this deficit. It's been going on for years. Why isn't the price moving? And now I think I asked this to you in our last interview, and I've been asking other people now that the price is moving. I've been wondering, okay, is what is driving the price here? Is this a catch up to gold? Is this silver specific factors that are moving the price here? And most people seem to think it's a mix, which is fair. I also have seen those concerns from the banks about what's going on with the silver in London. And that it does make me think, okay, maybe there's something big going on there. Maybe that's something new that hasn't been present in the market before that could make an impact. But it gets very tricky because it's like, well, what does that actually mean? I think right now I can feel extremely safe saying silver can go past 50. It doesn't really even feel fair to say that right now when it's so close. So we're practically already there. But beyond that, who really knows? And for me, I think as the prices have been moving, I've started to find the ratios a little bit more helpful in trying to contextualize what's happening. Because we all know, I'm sure we all know the gold silver ratio is historically high. So if I think to myself, all right, if I think gold is going to stay high, then of course that means that silver has some catching up to do. So those historical data points have been helping me a lot. But like I wondered to myself quite a bit about the industrial side of silver. I know the solar angle is strong. I've been hearing more about military applications for silver as we're having all these conflicts going on in the world. But maybe this is me thinking back to this is less so right now, but when we're having all these calls for recession, I was thinking, well, what does that mean for silver demand? That doesn't sound like it's going to be so good. Then I have other people telling me, well, what if one of those big industrial users sees the price rising and decides they want to come in and secure their silver? That could be very impactful for the market. So I feel like this is a really long way to just say, I'm not really sure about silver. I do feel like I've heard so much about the volatility that I'm probably ready for anything at this point.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was funny. It was either last week or the week before. Once the trading week wrapped up on Friday, we'd had 2 or 3 days in a row where silver's up more than $1. It was like, wow, I guess it's possible that silver could be over $50 next week, or similar with gold today, where it's up $75 and within 20 less than $20 from 4,000, where a week ago, people were saying, "Oh, we might hit 4,000 in 2025." Now it's like we might hit
Yeah.
4,000 this week. So certainly things moving quickly. Which Charlotte brings us to my next question that you and I talked a little bit about before. But what do you say where it's like, all right, gold, we'll call it 4,000, silver 50. But like, where does that leave people? Is now a time to buy? I mean, on one hand, I would say, well, what should you do? And you should have been watching Charlotte's channel for the last 4 or 5 years and bought when silver was 20 or 25 or $30. So I guess it's a depends on one's timeline, but it's a little bit of a different question where, if you're more of a trader, is this the best level? Although at the same time, if someone's genuinely trying to preserve wealth or asset value, that gives you a different perspective. But what would you say there to people who wonder, all right, given where we are today, what would I do now? You're not giving licensed financial advice, but just your thoughts on how you would approach thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah. That's something that has been on my mind a lot lately and definitely not advice, but I can't read every comment on our channel, but I try to read enough to get a general vibe of what's going on. And there are people who they have their plan, they're set, they know what they're doing. And there are people who are looking at what's happening and thinking, okay, well, silver and gold, they've gotten to these levels that we've heard about for so long. What do I do now? And what I'm trying to get across, I think, I do a weekly video and in the interviews that I do is it's really important to know yourself as an investor. And that means what you were just saying, know your risk tolerance, know what your goals are, know what the rest of your portfolio looks like. And then I also think like have your own thesis. I don't want to tell people don't watch the interviews and don't listen to the experts because then I won't have a job. But I think the important thing is to say, listen to them and then figure out how they can apply to what you're doing because they can't tell you the right thing to do for you. And it's interesting. I feel like I understand that a lot more now than I used to because I used to maybe be a little bit disappointed when people come on and they aren't being, giving their stock picks or, coming out with like, this is what to do. And I get it so much more now where it's like, no, like you have to think about what they're saying and then apply it to yourself. And it took a while for that to hit home for me. I I'm a very risk averse kind of person. And I think I felt for a long time like I'm here in this industry. I should be finding the best risky junior exploration stock and like going all in on that and making all the money that way. And I felt kind of bad about it. And now I'm just like, no, I think it's more important to recognize like that's not me. That's not going to work for me. So yeah, I think that's important to get out to people.
Yeah, that's really well said. I can experience that at times as well, doing a show where there's on one hand times where it's like, well, I need to know everything about everything, yet I think you do perfectly in fulfilling your role of getting people a lot of information. And like you said, I think any sort of investing, when the person whose money it is at least has ownership of that process, and then you can filter in other positions, whether you're outsourcing part of that. But I think that's really a starting point for all these things. And I'm quite grateful to all of the information that you share and the guests that you bring on. And speaking of which, I was thinking this would be a fun one. All these hundreds or maybe even thousands of interviews you've done now, whether during the call or perhaps something that didn't get captured on camera, anything stand out as the most impactful, or maybe there's more than one, or perhaps some shocking story that you can reveal, or just of all the time you've been doing this, anything that stands out from all these different people you've talked with?
Well, I don't think I have anything too shocking or crazy to tell you, unfortunately. Although I do love a good shocking story. I think what I might mention, it's happened multiple times over the years. And this is kind of going along with what you said about things that don't come through on screen. I've really appreciated there's been people who kind of taken interest in me and what I'm doing in terms of like investing journey and things like that, and just taking the time to be like, what are you doing? Are you doing okay? Like, do you understand this? And it's nice to have those kind of off camera conversations, because you try to, when you're asking the questions, look like you totally know what's going on. But I've had some good off camera times where people have been able to clarify things and maybe go in a direction that we wouldn't film. So I don't know if that answers it very well, but that's something that came to mind.
Yeah, well, I know exactly what you mean, where I think most of the people you and I talk with are genuinely good people that are trying to help people understand things. And I don't, remembering back to my trader days where it was often not the case, but it's like, I don't think that makes someone a better investor or speaker if they can talk over someone's head and remembering. And I think it's really important you mention that. Remember, everyone's at their own level, and it's okay to be where you are. And you just continue to learn as you go along. And Charlotte, one other thing I had on my list to ask you here, something we've heard all year about how this gold and silver was supposedly coming from London to New York. Quite a bit of it came over. Not everyone. The consensus seemed to be, well, they're worried about the tariffs, so metal coming over here. Now there's some of the guys you interview like me or a few others where we're thinking, wondering, well, I don't remember ever hearing them talk specifically about tariffing London.
Yeah.
And we also did have that thing with the Bank of England where, there were the delivery delays for 4 to 8 weeks. Any thoughts? Again, I know you've talked to a lot of people about that, but did you have any takeaway of, did it seem weird, or do you have a hypothesis? Do you think it was just strictly because of the tariffs or anything along those lines?
Oh my goodness. That's a tricky silver question. Like I was saying, this market is very difficult, I think, to follow sometimes. I don't think I would venture to give a theory, but I will say it did seem like everybody was talking about it as though it was something that we hadn't seen before. It doesn't sound like it's moved back or has plans to. So, what is its function over there in New York? Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you there. That one is beyond me.
Yeah, well, me too, and a lot of other people are left wondering. And it's interesting, in the couple times in the past few days, we've seen the London spot price trade over the New York COMEX futures. It's a little bit unusual, and at least conceivably, if London spot price gets high enough, maybe we'll see some of that metal go back. But Charlotte, last one for you here is that in the midst of all this happening, I don't think Trump has called Powell a loser or a numbskull, at least to my knowledge, in the last week or so. But I mean, there's that whole circus, which I think is behind a lot of what we're seeing, especially in these last couple of weeks with the metals, where a lot of metal going into those ETFs now. And at the end of it, I mean, they're already lowering interest rates. Their dot plot said they're going to lower interest rates more than expected. And then we have Trump picking the next person to take over the Fed, which means that we're going to get someone who's going to lower interest rates even faster. Did I miss anything on that one or anything to add there on our monetary cycle policy?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And okay, I think this is kind of interesting because I've been talking about what's going on with the Fed and Trump and Powell to a lot of people. And I feel like a lot of the time what I'm getting told is like, okay, yes, it's important and we have to talk about it, but I'm getting a lot of reminders of like, okay, also it's the underlying factors that are important for gold right now. So a lot of mention of the central bank buying and the de-dollarization and the general geopolitical unrest and distrust in fiat currencies. So I feel like every time I bring up the Fed, I get that reminder of the broader circumstances and everything that's going on there. I assume that Powell is almost out. I assume that he is probably not going to get fired at this point, although you never know. There's a lot of unpredictability going on. So
And we did have, you saw that cartoon Trump tweeted a week or two ago where it's like,
I did see it. I did see it. So never say never. Yeah, never say never. He maybe he will be, but he's pretty close. He seems pretty close to the end of his term. But I would assume after that, based on the way things are going, Trump will nominate a new Fed chair who is more amenable to doing what he wants to do, which is lower interest rates. I would guess we see rates go lower this year, and then again when we see this new Fed chair in next year. I like to use the Fed Watch tool online. I feel like that gives me a good gauge of what people are thinking. And then I assume that inflation goes back up and not down toward that 2% target that we never got to. Maybe one more note on what's going on with the Fed. I had an interesting conversation last week with Adam Rosenzweig where he was essentially making the point that people are concerned and looking at this as, oh no, like Fed independence is being threatened. And it's concerning, but he mentioned a couple of times in the past where there is precedent of presidents being threatening of or trying to, have the Fed do what they would like to do. So he explains it much better than I do, but I was interested to hear that history. So I don't know if that helps.
yeah, well, I certainly know what you mean there. And speaking of the whole Fed independence thing, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Mohammed is.
This is a really difficult moment for this institution. Hopefully, we'll be able to navigate it, but I am worried.
Mohammed's very worried about that. I won't get into my rant over silliness of this thing, especially when we had James Baker tell Paul Volcker basically that he wasn't raising interest rates until after the election back in the 80s. But Charlotte, very well said on everything you mentioned here. And yeah, it's just really an exciting time to be doing this, especially. I know most gold and silver investors feel like they've been given the Book of Job level exercise in patience. Although I know there's just a lot of people who are grateful for you and everything you've done all of these years, where even whether the market's up or down, going out and talking to people. And that's what I think is great. If you just keep listening to these things and like you said, you start to form your own opinion and, factor in different things. And that I think is what's really helpful then when you get to a point where it's like, okay, now the environment's changed. What is my own thought process to do next? And, if you're watching stuff like the great channel that you produce, then I think this is when it really kicks in. So you don't need to say, what would this guy or that guy do? But you have the foundation. Reminds me, if I can make one other example, like the guy who hits a hole in one in golf because he gets lucky once, and it's like, well, you hear things are based on confidence, but what really gets you confidence, not the hole in one, but when you've developed that underlying skill. And I know there are thousands of people who are grateful for your help in doing that. And perhaps just in wrapping up, can you let people know the best place to find you, especially if there's anyone seeing Charlotte the Legend for the first time?
Oh, well, thank you so much for all of those words. And likewise back to you. I love watching what you're doing, and I think it's so valuable as well. If people want to find us, we are on YouTube. It's Investing News. And we have a website as well, which is investingnews.com. So that's where you can find me. And if you scroll down far enough, I think you should see yourself in, there you
But
are. There we go. Very
yeah, so
nice.
silver price was a little bit lower then, so it's been rallying. And who have you had on recently? Who is that? Rick Rule and Schechtman and a few others there. And
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. And yeah.
and then here is the investingnews.com website. So there you guys are on it. Gold price set site. Well, actually, it's
Well,
all right. We're gonna have to update that title up to 4,000 almost. So
it's on my list after this, for sure.
all righty. Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for doing this. I'm honored to be your first interview on the other side of the camera, and just beautifully said. And I think on behalf of many of us, thank you for everything you've done over the years, because it's made quite a difference in the gold and silver journey for so many of us. And we'll have to do this again soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. This was fun.
Well, thank you to the great Charlotte McLeod. A lot of fun talking with her and finally getting to hear what she has to say about all these things, as she's done such a great job interviewing so many others for years. So great to have her on, and hope you enjoyed that one at home. One other note I'll pass along is that as you hear that some of the bullion dealers are running out of certain products, there has been an uptick in physical silver buying in particular. And there's a chance that some products run out, although just make sure you're distinguishing between that. Sometimes you, and often what has happened is you have silver, but it's just not in the particular minted forms. So we'll keep you posted on how all of that goes, but just wanted to mention that since I've seen that out and about on the internet. And finally, one piece of news to pass along before we wrap up. Obviously, I'm sure many of you remember Silver Viper, who we used to have on the show monthly, although they've basically finally did their deal, did their financing, got the financing in place. And I just want to mention that they did finally also announce that drilling program, which we talked about for a long time. And again, just wanted to give you an update because they are announcing the commencement of a 5,000 meter drill program at their La Virginia Gold project. And the two targets they're going to be working with there are El Molino, with an initial 8 to 9 reconnaissance drill hole program to evaluate the underexplored area. And then they shift to El Ruby, where they will be updating and aiming to expand the existing resource. So put the link to this in the press release below, but did just want to pass that along since I know any of you that were following that story has been quite a while, but fortunately the drilling program finally underway. So good step forward for Silver Viper. Thanks as always for being here. And in case you missed the latest on the somewhat perilous conditions in the LBMA London silver market, well, just click on this call with Bill Holter that's coming your way now.